Hey guys, welcome back to the Longevity Podcast with Natalie Nidham. That's me. I'm so happy to have you back. Maybe if you're on social media following me, you know that we have surpassed 1 million downloads with this podcast, and that is thanks to all of you. So thank you so much for listening in and for all of your amazing comments and shares and all the things. We, myself and the team so appreciate it. I also want to point out that a lot of like the ads that you're going to listen to and all of those things, very often we do get a small feedback when you use those codes and links and make a purchase. And I want to thank you for that, because that is really how I pay for the podcast. That's how we keep this ship afloat, as it were. So I want to thank you for your support and all that as well, and to be transparent about it. And please know that I take this all very seriously, and I only choose to work with brands that I believe in and that I use for myself, for my clients, for my family, and the whole 9 yards. So anything else that you need from me, make sure that you head over to natnidham.com and sign up for the newsletter, because that's how we get to keep in touch. And that's how I can tell you about all the amazing things that are out in the space in a little bit more detail. All right, let's talk a bit about this episode, because this is a really great topic. Like, how many, you've probably heard of the benefits of curcumin, but it's kind of hard to know where to start. And it's an interesting compound because it's found in turmeric, which is a root, as many of you know, and it's been used in Ayurvedic medicine for thousands of years. And modern science is, really starting to figure out that maybe it needs to be a staple in our lives. And so today's episode is an interview conversation with Dr. Shivani Gupta, who is the CEO of Fusionary Formulas. And she literally self-defines and she embodies this. She is a curcumin evangelist. I have met her a number of times. She's, quite apart from being an incredible human being, she is so passionate about this. And she shares her knowledge with us about how curcumin can really be helpful in reducing inflammation, supporting joint health, boosting brain function, and so many more of the elements of longevity, living a long and healthy life. It is a versatile superfood that we could all benefit from incorporating into our diets and supplement routines, but it's really about quality and bioavailability. And curcumin is notoriously poorly bioavailable. And so Shivani talks about the ways of really formulating a product that is incredibly effective. And I will tell you that I've given all of, very often people will give us product to try. I keep giving mine to my dad because he deals with a certain amount of inflammation in his back that can really cause him a lot of pain. And he just keeps calling me and asking for more. So it really does seem to hit the mark with people. So Dr. Shivani is an Ayurvedic practitioner and expert in fusing Eastern and Western practices, which is one of the things that I love about her, right? She's not saying Western medicine is garbage. What she's saying is, what can we take from Western medicine? How do we marry it to Eastern medicine and come together to create the most effective products? And she's done a really nice job with this. She's completed her master's in Ayurvedic sciences and her PhD on turmeric itself. So really, you're not going to find anybody more passionate about this topic or as well read and researched as this woman. We have a special offer for listeners of this podcast. If you want to try either of the Fusionary Formulas, curcumin supplements, all you have to do is go to fusionaryformulas.com and use code NAT15 to save 15% off your purchase. And now let's jump into the episode. Hey folks, just a quick reminder that all of the information presented in this podcast is for information purposes only. No medical advice, no diagnosing, no treatments suggested here. Before you try anything that you hear about or learn about here, make sure that you check with your medical provider. Welcome to the show, Shivani Gupta. It is such a pleasure to have you here. It's so nice to have you on the other side of the mic for a change.
Yes, for sure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, it's, ever since we met and first started talking, I mean, you're one of these people that is so passionate about her topic. You're kind of like, you glow with it, right? And you kind of can't stop yourself. Where was it in Miami at the Microbiome Labs event that we first met?
Yes.
And you were just like, so, I don't know, you're just so effusive naturally anyway, but you were just so effusive about the curcumin and its powers and this and that. You're like, you have this
tractor beam that kind of draws people in. So
Thank
I'm
you.
really excited for this conversation. But before we dive into curcumin, you kind of come to curcumin both from professionally, really, as the area of health medicine, really, that you chose. So maybe tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to become so crazy passionate about curcumin. Although you do stop short at wearing the color of curcumin, which I think is cool.
I just stopped short, but my whole team would like me in yellow every day. If it was up to them, I'd wear mustard yellow every day.
Yeah.
But yes, I was born in Houston, Texas, an Indian American girl, and I used to go to India every year of my life. And so I always lived in these two worlds where when I'd go to India, my grandma would give us turmeric and use all these spices on us whenever we had a health issue, versus here in the US, when I had a health issue, I'd go to the pediatrician and she'd just give us antibiotics. And so it was just such a dichotomous world that I lived in, and I could never grapple or understand it. And by the time I got to college, I had so many health issues that had piled up, so much gut dysbiosis. I felt like I had no immune system. And that really set me on this path of like, why? Why do I have no immune system? Everyone else gets to have a defense system in place. I need to fix this. And I was sitting in an office in India, sick as a dog, just couldn't function, about to be hospitalized. And I looked at my parents and I said, you know what? We're in the land of yoga and Ayurveda. I think we need to find a different toolkit. Like the current one is not working for me at all. The high dose antibiotics we've done for 4 years now is just not cutting it. And so I went on this quest through India. And my parents were very successful, but very burnt out entrepreneurs. And so they just went on the quest with me, and we detoxed. We went through Bangalore and Mumbai and Chennai and everywhere in the Himalayas. And once I studied Ayurveda, this system of medicine from India, I was like, this is it. This is the Holy Grail. How come no one knows that this is sitting here and this wisdom is so good for us? And that led me to doing my master's in Ayurvedic sciences. And my whole goal was to write books. I just wanted to teach the world that Ayurveda works. And then when I embarked on my PhD dissertation, I chose turmeric because my whole family is so diabetic and has all the advanced issues of diabetes that I couldn't figure out, like, how do I get to be a successful entrepreneur, but then not hit a wall called disease management for the last quarter of my life. And to me, turmeric was that tool that we could pull out of Ayurveda and easily use to really achieve a lot of the health benefits that we need nowadays.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great story. That's amazing that your parents came along with you on the quest. That's so cool. Yeah. It's like a family quest. I love it.
Yeah. And I think my dad was really an original biohacker because he grew up with parents with Parkinson's and diabetes. And I'll never forget, I was in middle school, early 90s, and he had the power plate and green juice and vitamins and supplements going. So before his time, he was obsessed with it and really exposing me to, hey, this stuff works. Like we have to find our own toolkits to fix our health.
Yeah. And I love your perspective on Ayurveda. Like when I went back to school to study nutrition, we did. And I mean, the thing with Ayurvedic medicine, we're talking about a discipline that's 5,000 years old. Like people have been doing this for a really long time. So talk about a validated, maybe not in double-blind clinical studies, although there are those now increasingly. Yes. But talk about a discipline that has stood the test of time in many ways. And so now, having said that, we did a course on Ayurvedic medicine, and what that taught me is how complex and deep it goes. You don't learn to become a practitioner in Ayurveda in a semester. You're just
no.
You scratch the surface.
Yeah, and I still feel like a child in Ayurveda.
Yeah, no, I mean for sure, and all the best practitioners tend to be kind of people who've been around for a while. They've been practicing and honing their craft, because Ayurveda, I think, like so many, well, not so many, but like other of this type of practice, for example, traditional Chinese medicine is extremely focused on the individual. Right. And right, like I think that, and one of the filters that Ayurveda uses is the doshas. Which maybe you want to talk about those a little bit, because I think that many people may have heard about them, but other people may not. But your dosha is kind of like your kind of makeup or your disposition that has a predictive aspect in terms of what types of therapies might benefit you and what might work for you and what might not. It has to do with cold and wet and all those things. So maybe you want to talk to us about doshas a little bit. And what dosha are you?
Oh, yeah, I'm a pitta through and through. I'm like 100% born pitta with a vata mind that likes to go 200 miles an hour, and I have to keep grounding it and controlling it. Otherwise, I have too many ideas and I drive everyone crazy. But the doshas are a beautiful concept out of Ayurveda that show us almost like our personality quiz. So I have a dosha quiz on my website. I want everyone to like take it and understand what their dosha is. But we have a primary and secondary dosha. Some people are three doshic, and the doshas are made up of the elements of earth: fire, water, earth, ether. And these elements coming together are what dictate our bodies, our personality types, our energy types. And so a vata person is more air and ether. They're going to be constantly in motion. A pitta person's more fire. They're going to be fiery in the mind, fiery in their ambitions, fiery in their bodies too, overheating and all the issues there. And then a kapha person, the third dosha, is going to be grounded. They're earth with water, like heavier energy. And so understanding your dosha, you can leverage how to stay balanced, how to constantly calibrate yourself, how to shift your emotions, your mental health, your physical health on a daily basis, aligning it to the seasons. You can align it to circadian rhythm. So it sounds complex, but if you understand your basic dosha, you know how to balance yourself. And if you're mega imbalanced, if you have a vitiated dosha, as I call it, then all of a sudden, let's bring you back to home. So you feel like home base in your body and you feel balanced. Like on a daily basis, I build my rhythm, I build my circadian rhythm, and I build my day around my dosha. And then I'm 100 times more successful in my personal life and in business. So that's where I love the doshic wisdom is it's this ancient wisdom that allows us to bring our body, mind, and spirit into alignment. And that's what I call vibrant health, when our vibration is aligned to who we're really meant to be.
Oh, that makes so much sense. And it is so fascinating that it's not just about the physical, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, when we learned about it in school, well, actually, that's not true. I mean, I know that our teacher who was hilarious, he was the best. He was this guy from India, and he was
nice.
You know, it's funny. I feel like people who really get into Ayurveda just become so passionate about it because
we become evangelists. I should be like on a church stage for how excited I get. I'm like, let's go. And then I'm like, Shivani, why are you just the crazy one here? But if everyone lived by Ayurveda, we wouldn't have disease the way we have it right now. So once you live it, you're like, let's go team, come on.
Yeah, no, for sure. And you know, interestingly enough, I mean, even in India, people don't live it, right? I mean,
True.
I think that modern life has left no stone unturned, and nobody has, I mean, not nobody, but very few people have escaped it in many ways because, you know, the pace of life. I mean, if you're kapha, which is slower, more steady, more grounded, and you're caught up in the current pace of craziness, you're constantly at odds with your nature. And I think one of the ways that's going to show up is maybe in your nervous system.
Totally.
Where you're struggling, like a nervous system that needs a certain degree of balance is getting pushed into overdrive constantly.
Absolutely. So I teach kapha women, like, just embrace what you are. You are Mother Earth. And carry that energy, and then learn the ways that you can move faster, because you can move kapha, but just so you stay honoring that you are that, and don't try to fit in with the rest of the world. Also, why do we have all vata bodies as like the body type? I'm like, there's also the rest of us. We're not all born vatas. So it's interesting when you have this awareness, you can kind of look around and say, oh, that's just not me. That's like 1/3 of the population. I'm a pitta. I can't look like that. I'm not going to be like that. And that's okay.
So what are the body types that go with each one?
So vata is like thin and wiry, small boned, lean, like that lean body type. And pitta is in the middle. Pitta is going to be red and fiery, but we're right in the middle. We're going to have tendency to gain weight. We have to manage it. We have these huge appetites where we just want to eat all the time.
Because of the fire that burns within.
Yeah, because we have that digestive fire that's churning and burning. And so if we don't watch it, we'll just stress, eat everything, and we'll eat sugar to cool ourselves down. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, why did I gain 10 pounds? Oh, I'm accomplishing and eating too much. And then kapha is over here, and kapha has a tendency to go slow and steady. So kapha's bigger boned, kapha's stronger, kapha can lift heavier. Kapha has round features and curly, oily hair. So you have three very different body types. And as society, we're promoting certain things and not honoring that all are equally beautiful. So it's just an interesting perspective to keep, because sometimes I'll talk to the trainers at my gym and I'm like, hey, look at this picture. Like, can we accomplish this? And they're like, Shivani, you are not that's not your bone structure. Like, just understand what you are. And so that awareness has really taught me, like, how can we just love exactly what we've been given, and then not only honor it, but optimize for exactly what we are.
Yeah.
Like, I know what I am. So let's optimize and keep the best balance for this. Let's stay cool, calm, and collected as a fiery pitta and still win in the things that matter to us.
I love it. So before we dive into the passion in the middle of your passion, which is curcumin, I do want to ask you, you mentioned earlier, and I did learn that you're not, and most people will figure out, especially when they do your questionnaire, very few people are one dosha.
Correct.
Right? You can have your primary dosha, so what does that mean really? Like, does that mean different parts of you are different doshas, or you're kind of sitting between two different doshas, or how does that kind of work?
Well, at this moment, am a Pitta Vata. I'm a primary Pitta, but I do have some tendencies of Vata, like the mind constantly in motion, erratic sleep if I'm going through seasons of a lot of travel or busyness. So your primary dosha is kind of running the show. And your secondary dosha is also there. You're going to have either physical, mental, or emotional traits of that vata or that secondary dosha that are also driving alongside you. And so that's where you have to have that self-awareness and say, okay, you know what? Today is going to be a really vata day. Today's going to be crazy. I'm going to slow down. I'm going to balance in these ways. So I like to just give everyone the entire toolkit from Ayurveda. Like, let's understand gut health. Let's understand circadian rhythm. Let's understand how to approach inflammation. And if you have the toolkit and the self-care rituals, then you can constantly kind of calibrate with where you're going in life and build that stress resilience and that health resilience that we need to have on board, regardless of the dosha. But balancing the dosha is a key piece to staying balanced overall.
Nice. And I bet you that your doshas also is going to come into play when you're looking at some of these different biohacking tools.
Totally.
Right? Like if you're looking at the Sensate or the Apollo, like when we get even into biohacking technologies, different technologies are going to help you to tap into and rebalance, let's say, your nervous system or whatever the case may be, to come more into alignment with your dosha. That's so interesting.
Correct.
That would be a cool guide, actually.
It would be, because we take biohacking tools and we assume that they're for all of us. As a Pitta, I have to be really careful with infrared sauna. I love it. I think it's awesome. I get benefits. But there's a tipping point. And once I cross that tipping point, boom, it's like I sat in the sun for 18 hours. Like I'm overburnt and burnt out and toast, brain function gone, everything done. So we really have to watch. And kapha, like, why would a kapha necessarily cold plunge? Like you have to. Thank
God you said that.
Yeah, we're not all meant to do all the things. So understanding self is so important as opposed to just following the trends.
Yeah, I love that. And that's really interesting. Okay, cool. Well, we could do a whole podcast on that. But right now, let's dive into the passion in your passion, which is curcumin. So what made you pick this? I mean, it's this gorgeous spice, right? When you see it, when I make a spice mix, because I'm from a culture also where we use curcumin, but when you make a spice mix and you first have that, you put your spices in a bowl and you've got the deep red of the chili or the paprika, the gorgeous orange of the yellowy orange of the turmeric. You get that grounding brown of the cumin or the coriander. Like you get all these and these are classic images people get of these spice markets, for example. True. So what really drew you to this root, this curcumin that is, it's now there've been a ton of studies around it. So it's definitely
it's gone from attention. Like 1,000 studies to so many more. It's a few things. One, my family's diabetic. And so my goal in life was always, what is the solution? Like, how can we be successful, but all create such horrible disease? That doesn't make sense. So I was always on a quest for what's the tool that's going to work there. Also, whenever I've hurt myself and I run to orthopedics, they give me NSAIDs. And so while I was doing my studies, I threw out my back, I had plantar fasciitis, my knee hurt. And every time physical therapy at orthopedics would say, just take NSAIDs, just take that 24/7 for 7 days and you'll be fine. And at the time I listened. And then afterwards I had stomach aches every time I ate. And I went back and I said, you solved the problem, but you didn't solve the problem because you created a new problem. I don't understand. And so that really created this awareness of these guys are using tools, but those tools aren't awesome tools. Okay. And then when I was sitting in herbology class, in Ayurvedic class, I finally understood that we have superfoods here in the West and we're obsessed with them, like goji berries and all this stuff, cacao and everything we love to use. Ayurveda's super spices are the original superfoods. Each and every one has profound benefits. Cumin has profound benefits. Coriander, cilantro, all of them are great. Hing, Triphala, ashwagandha. Ashwagandha is like the new thing I'm obsessed with. That's not new at all. I just am more obsessed than ever with it. And so when I saw turmeric, I was like, this is it. When you say take a superfood for its antioxidant and anti-inflammatory benefits, why am I taking 50 things in the world if curcumin itself will just cover me? And so once I finished my dissertation, my whole family looked at me and they were like, if you are going to tell everyone on earth to take turmeric all day, you should make your own. And so that's what set me on this journey. But the science itself fascinates me. And I'm speaking at a lot of medical conferences on it on different topics. I spoke at a plastic surgery conference. Now I'm speaking on an inflammation and fibrosis, surgical conferences, A4M on longevity. And that's what excites me the most is educating physicians and practitioners on the applications of curcumin in medical practices as an adjunct solution to what they're going to do. Only because I saw that for myself in my own body. When I take NSAIDs, things don't go well. Truly, when I take any medication, things don't go well. So I need the alternative toolkit, but I want it at potency. Like I want to trust it. I want to know that it's clean and it's going to do the job. Because as you know, in supplements, we have a huge variation of quality.
For sure. Yeah. And we're going to get into that. But before we do that, so let's talk a little bit about how it works. You did mention already that it has, curcumin has very powerful antioxidant properties and anti-inflammatory. So maybe you want to speak a little bit to that, because I've been to the NSAID party a long, long time ago and had a very similar experience to yours. And at this point, won't and couldn't touch the stuff anymore anyway. So I'm one of those people that has to find other alternatives, which thankfully there are. But maybe let's talk a little bit about what are the methods of action really of curcumin in the antioxidant and anti-inflammatory space to the degree that we understand them.
Sure. So there's so much new science on this, which I love. And what's cool is when I was 16 in high school, I worked in the lab at MD Anderson Cancer Center under the scientist who discovered that it was curcumin and black pepper that increases the absorption by 2000%. So It's funny how later in life, now I'm a scientist studying curcumin, but I was as a child as well, just because that was an internship that I got and kind of set off this journey of what do plants do? What do botanicals do? How do we get into them? Cool. So curcumin is a very powerful antioxidant, as you know, and it basically it has the antioxidants scavenge molecules in the body that are known as like our free radicals, and those damage the cell membranes. They tamper with our DNA. They even cause cell death. So antioxidants, the fact that curcumin goes after the antioxidants and it prevents oxidation in the body is very powerful. And then from the anti-inflammatory standpoint, curcumin affects NF-kappa B. It affects so many of the inflammatory pathways. I have a whole chart on it, but it's almost like there's 30 different pathways of inflammation, and it goes after inflammation at this systemic level. What I have seen is it goes after all the big issues first, and then it goes after the really small issues of inflammation as well. And so we talk a lot about anti-inflammatory impacts of taking omega-3 and things like that, but we forget that just taking curcumin can go after those same inflammatory pathways in the body.
Nice. I read somewhere that it seems to also stimulate the action of other antioxidants.
Yeah, it does.
Can we talk a little bit about that? And I think that that's also one of the reasons why there's a small faction of people that say, well, why would you take something that causes oxidative stress, which makes your body make more antioxidants? Like, why just not take it in the first place? And my guess is the sum is greater than the like the outcome is much greater than the stimulus, but maybe you want to touch on that a little bit.
Sure. The thing is, when it comes to curcumin, from what I've seen, and there's so much science, and what's beautiful is there's more science every day. It goes after the problems in the body. Yes, it might cause some issues, like it'll enhance, but it's also doing that while simultaneously creating the result. So even from an immune system standpoint, you could say, well, it is an immune modulator because it's antibacterial, antiviral, and antifungal. But if you're autoimmune, sometimes you don't want to rev up the immune system. Sometimes you're trying to calibrate with it. So there is that nuance there where I tell people, look, try it, because you need to see for yourself what it's going to do. I would say 95% of the time, it does exactly what we want to do. And there is a good 5% where you're just not suitable for it. It's not going to tolerate well, or it's not going to do the job for you because of the nuances of it, like especially with gut health and gut issues.
Yeah. So what have you seen? So speaking of gut health and gut issues, like what have you seen there in the, like we talked about microbiome earlier, like ultimately, I think that its anti-inflammatory properties is really what we're going to keep talking about over and over and over again, right? Because if you read the research, or you even call up what are the 10 benefits of curcumin, you're going to see that it has benefits for the brain. But one of the interesting things about the brain is it seems to increase the production of BDNF, which is aside from the anti-inflammatory properties, right? So because it is also being researched for Alzheimer's, yes?
Correct, because it stops amyloid plaques from forming in the brain.
Right. And the whole anti-inflammatory pathways as well. Right.
Correct.
But BDNF is interesting. Are you able to speak to that a little bit?
I don't have any data on that.
You don't? Okay. So I was just, you do your homework before the podcast kind of thing. Yeah. And so this article was talking about how it seems to increase the production of BDNF, which is brain-derived neurotropic factor, which of course helps us to get smarter. And it helps us to retain information and all the, improves neural pathways in the brain. So similar to exercise, right?
Got it.
So interesting that something that modulates inflammation, which ultimately, like you mentioned diabetes earlier.
Yep.
Is curcumin's ability to help with diabetes purely through the anti-inflammatory pathway, or is it doing something else?
Well, it increases our uptake of glucose, like it helps the absorption of glucose into muscles and adipocytes, adipose tissue. So it helps there. With the liver, it also helps. And it functions along the same pathway, AMPK, which is the same pathway that metformin uses when it comes to the liver. So when it comes to processing our glucose, which is one of the functions of the liver, curcumin can function like metformin. So there's a lot of science there. It also helps with belly fat, also helps with metabolic health, also helps with insulin resistance, lowering our fasting glucose that we wake up with in the morning. So we have meta-analysis studies. We have these huge studies that have looked at over 16 controlled randomized trials of curcumin. And within those, like I know a lot more about the joint pain side, but on the side of metabolic health, they showed in a group of women for PCOS that in that group, it decreased body fat. It also lowered the fasting glucose in the morning, and of course, had the anti-inflammatory effect that we talk about. But these are very interesting new discoveries. And it's funny because when you go to an Ayurvedic conference, all the Ayurvedic doctors are like, we already knew it was great for everything. But now the modern science is issue by issue publishing in trials how it's effective, which is so cool. So it sounds too good to be true. I try to be careful because if you speak to a physician, they don't want to hear about anything being a miracle herb. But truly, if it helps with metabolic health issues, and it helps with insulin resistance, and it helps with joint pain, and it helps with brain health, neuroinflammation, brainflammation is what they're calling it. So our brains being inflamed is such a big problem for us. And it helps with gut health and then women's health issues. It's really like a great support to most things. And I think that's just because, again, as a society, we're so inflamed. We just are. And we're carrying this inflammation. We're causing our own gut dysbiosis. And then that's affecting everything else.
100%. And so one of the things so let's talk a little bit about the musculoskeletal issues before I send us off on another tangent here. Because one of the early studies that I'd read that really impressed me, and we mentioned it earlier, is that supplementing consistently with curcumin or the right form of curcumin can be as effective as something else that you mentioned earlier, which is NSAIDs in managing pain.
Correct.
So maybe let's dig into that a little bit, because NSAIDs are a fast, easy solution that, as you say, causes a whole other set of problems, even if it might solve one.
Correct. Yes. So when it comes to NSAIDs and all this use, there was a meta-analysis done of curcumin for knee osteoarthritis in randomized controlled trials. They studied over 1,800 patients, and they looked at the data, and they said there was 12% less adverse reactions, adverse effects from the patients who took the curcumin. And what I'm interested in is there's curcumin with NSAIDs, and then there's NSAIDs. So a lot of these studies, and I'm actually in the middle of applying for NIH grants to do one of these, because I want one done here in the US with a specific curcumin, and I want to prove my point constantly in medicine. But what they found was there's less adverse effects. Curcumin is as effective as NSAIDs in the short term. Now they're going to expand this on its own. Curcumin to NSAID, curcumin is as effective as NSAIDs for joint pain, and they proved it already in knee osteoarthritis. That's huge for the amount of knee pain, hip pain, joint pain, back pain that we're seeing in people constantly. We have OA, we have RA. People are suffering with their osteoarthritis. They're suffering with their rheumatoid arthritis. And so that's the biggest area, I would say, where curcumin is being studied and easily proving its point. Easily proving that it's as effective. You can also use it for the synergistic, I wouldn't say synergistic, for the adjunct effect of taking both. A lot of times people ask me, will curcumin help me? I'm taking this medication. And I always say, look, take both and see how quick you can come off the medication. That's something you can easily apply to yourself and test for yourself. And so we've been able to prove that we can cut opioid use in half out of orthopedics using curcumin. We can cut NSAID use and similar types of prescribed NSAID use down significantly using curcumin. And so that's my area of interest, where I'm like, wow, considering how many people over a certain age, or anyone who's in the space of loving to exercise and be an athlete or any of those things, is using pain solutions. What if we just replace the pain solutions with this magical yellow spice from India that just does the job? So yeah, there's a lot of science on knee osteoarthritis.
Nice. Just don't get it on your clothes because it stains like crazy.
Yes.
It's a dye, actually, right? And in addition to everything else. Okay, so does it? Well, I guess in relieving the inflammation, does it actually help with healing, or is it just that by relieving the inflammation, it opens the door to the healing pathways of the body to kick in another aspect?
It actually does both. So turmeric was used topically for thousands of years before it was ingested anyway. But when you got a pain, any issue on the skin, curcumin was always used topically to get in there. It had an antibacterial effect, of course, but it really has a lot of healing properties to it. It's still used as face masks and in a lot of ways in India. So I think it has a lot of multidimensional benefits. A lot of people want to use it in their food. I think that's great. But yes, it has a healing effect, anti-inflammatory effect, antioxidant effect, and then all the others as well.
So as a topical, though, wouldn't it turn you orange?
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity.
You can wash it off. It's not going to be permanent.
Oh, it'll come off.
It'll come off with some soap.
And between the methylene blue and the turmeric, you just turn into a rainbow person.
Correct.
Okay, so then what about children? Because children can eat curcumin.
Correct.
But is it safe for children to take curcumin supplements? And not that you want a child just out of the gate, but kids who, let's say, have, let's say something like eczema or psoriasis, like some of these skin conditions that are inflammatory, they are driven sometimes by an overactive immune system. Is it something that a child can use therapeutically, or is it that the dose needs to be titrated, or might it be maybe not the right way to go for them?
So here in the West, we always have to worry so much about our liability. So in the supplement world, the answer would just be no, because we don't have the studies. We simply don't study curcumin in 500 milligram capsules on children.
Right.
But I get a lot of phone calls about that. And I tell everyone, look, I get it. You don't want to give the NSAID to the child for their RA or their joint pain and all those types of issues that you're seeing. Open a capsule, give them half. Like you could work with your own child at your own risk based on their size. Like my child is 80 pounds. I'm somewhere, we'll say around 130-ish pounds. So if the child's about half your size, then,
give them about
half or a little less than half, somewhere in there.
Okay.
For its effect. Or you would use a lot of turmeric. The problem is turmeric powder doesn't taste good when you try to high dose it. So it's not.
I don't even like golden milk. I mean, I know people love golden milk, but it's not my jam. Like by the time I'm done making it taste good, it's so full of sugar. It's so full of honey. And I mean, the cinnamon's good, but it's so full of honey that it's basically a sugar bomb. So
right. So there's no point.
No, I've come, I mean, and honey's got its own properties, but there's limits.
Sure.
Okay. So let's talk about dosage a little bit. Like, can people just put curcumin in all their food and get enough? Because we're going to talk about dosage and bioavailability, because those two things are very closely linked. Like you could be, I've seen people throw raw curcumin, turmeric root into their smoothies and grating it into their food and the whole 9 yards, which is all fine and good. But how bioavailable really is it? And are they really getting those curcuminoids, which are the active ingredients, if you will, in the curcumin?
Right. The thing is, out of the entire turmeric plant, only 3% is the curcuminoids. And out of those 3 curcuminoids, curcumin is the most effective at reducing inflammation. And so a lot of times people are consuming turmeric every which way. They're taking their raw turmeric, their dried turmeric, golden milk, like you mentioned, but that's not the most effective way to get it. To get that high dose extract to significantly reduce inflammation in the body, we must take it in a capsule form where someone has taken that full 500 milligrams extract, put it in the capsule, added the black pepper or piperine for absorption, and then we can look at what other things to add in to further increase the absorption in the body. Curcumin is not easily bioavailable, and thus it must have things added in to create that result. That's where we add in the piperine or we add in healthy fats to create the result that we want. And so a lot of people have shared with me, I juice it every day. And I'm like, good for you. In India, we didn't use raw turmeric. We just don't use it. It's not part of what we do. So if you can imagine, when you take that raw plant and you dry it into the spice, you are already making it more potent. Like ginger powder is more potent than ginger, the raw root. Although in ginger, I love raw as well. But if you take, for example, cilantro, I take cilantro as coriander powder and use that in my cooking. I don't use raw cilantro. That's like on top as a garnish. But to create the level of flavor we want, we're going to use that crushed spice. So turmeric, the powder, is great. The problem is you'd need like an entire mason jar's worth to get what's in a 2-week supply of the supplement. And the typical Western household is not going to use that much of the regular turmeric powder. They need the extract form to create the result. And as society, I think we're very inflamed. I think there's so many factors out there that are diminishing our health. So we have to put like a game plan in place, almost like a battle plan in place to reduce that inflammation. And so when it comes to curcumin, if you want to increase that bioavailability, you need to be consuming it, whether in the powder or the raw form, with black pepper or a healthy fat in there, or you're just not going to get that absorption. You're not going to get that benefit that you're looking for.
Love it. Okay, well, let's talk about the black pepper, because this, again, is another little point of controversy. Like, I remember the first time I mentioned it to you, you were like, oh my God, not that again. So
I see people who I really respect and admire say it. And I'm like, okay, guys, really? You think that smidge of black pepper is causing gut irritation? Do you know how much hot pepper I eat? I pour hot sauce and hot pepper on everything. If anyone's burned through their gut lining, according to you, it's me. I put black pepper on everything. And what's funny is I was thinking about it today. In India, we have a spice called garam masala. Garam masala is in our masala kit of the spices we use to custom create our curries that we use in our food.
Yeah.
And when we put garam masala, it's always going to have black pepper. So you're telling me that 1 billion of us on this planet who are Indian, plus all the other cultures who love turmeric, are all damaging our gut lining, when in fact, I think a lot of the Asian countries are shown to have better brain health, less neurocognitive disease, and a lot of, benefits that come from these things. So I laugh at it. I can't imagine that the 4 milligrams piperine extract is really irritating the gut lining and causing the problem. I think a lot of times we look to beautiful solutions and try to blame them, when in fact, maybe it's your, I don't know, fast food that could be causing the problem. It could be a lot of maybe your alcohol consumption is causing damage to the gut lining. Like, why are you looking at black pepper? It's just another beautiful spice in the spice cabinet. It's not the enemy.
Well, and I also think that it's in the company of the turmeric, the curcumin, and the curcuminoids, and the fat, which in and of themselves are going to most likely modulate any negative impact of the piperine or the piperine on the gut lining. So you may have something that's creating a bit of an irritation. It's a little bit like when we exfoliate our skin, like we're disrupting that skin barrier. We are creating a bit of an irritation with a view to then bringing something on board that's going to not only resolve it, but then up the ante on healing. And so I wonder if maybe, we tend to have such a reductionist view of things. So we look at that black pepper in isolation without taking into account all the other things that are maybe if we took that black pepper oil or whatever on its own as a supplement, good luck to you. It's kind of like taking your NSAIDs. It's going to drill holes into your gut. But I wonder if it's the synergy of all of these different things that really is what we should be looking at. And
that's the thing. Ayurveda has been all about what are the things that work together beautifully from Mother Earth and the plant kingdom to give us the result that we want in the body. And like you said, it's a 5,000-year-old science. And so for over 5,000 years, they tested and tested and tested and figured this out. And so although I'm the biggest fan of curcumin that exists, and I think we should all use it, I'm also constantly playing with that world to understand what are the order of the ingredients we can give to people to create the result that we're hoping for. Then after that, I educate them on Ayurveda because I still want them to apply the lifestyle. But I created a formulation where we did curcumin, boswellia, dry ginger, amla, guduchi, turmeric, black pepper. So you can create this synergistic effect with all the herbs. And what's cool is when you're in formulation mode, the primary herbs do the main job. The secondary herbs are also supporting that main goal you have. But those 3rd, 4th, and 5th herbs are increasing the absorption, taking them where they need to go in the body, and then mitigating the negative effect of even putting potent herbs in the body in the first place.
Yeah.
Because here in the West, we think of everything as every day. What am I supposed to do every day? There's actually nothing we should really do every day. We should flex. We should have seasonality. So in these herbs, they're creating a potent effect in the body, especially when we're pulling the extract out so strongly. And, when we're in this world of botanicals, we can't underestimate how much significant and fast impact they have in the body. So that's why I love Ayurveda. We're going through there and saying, I want to create a change, but how do I sympathetically do it with the body going along for the ride, as opposed to just jamming a masking of symptoms or jamming an effect on the body and not recognizing that there has to be a holistic approach.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I love that you're mentioning, that you're creating a synergistic blend of ingredients that ultimately support each other, amplify each other, and mitigate some of the effects of each other. So that's a really elegant way to put it, actually. So let's talk a little bit about, and so you mentioned 2 things. Well, one thing in particular, and then I'm going to bring up a second one. And you mentioned that there's nothing that everybody should do all the time. So when it comes to curcumin or turmeric supplementation, how long should people supplement for? And should they just be supplementing just because, we all know the people that take or try to take 60 pills a day or more.
Yeah.
Right. And because they read somewhere, and I've had those clients are like, oh yeah, well, and I had a guy, God love him. He had like a spreadsheet of everything that he took. And I got anxiety just from reading the spreadsheet. And I thought, okay, well, let's pull out some of these blocks and maybe do a couple of blocks for a couple of months and then bring in the next couple of blocks for another couple of months, that kind of thing. But let's talk a little bit about how long should people use their turmeric supplement for, or curcumin supplement for? And is there a specific length of time you don't recommend going beyond? Should people wait until they see issues before they use it? Or, is it the kind of thing that you might do periodically during the year, even if you don't have any noticeable? Because we talk about curcumin supplementation also as a longevity tool. So in that sense, for someone who's in reasonable balance and doesn't really have any major health issues right now, should they be doing like a cycle or two or that kind of thing?
Sure. That's a complex question because
I asked about 7 questions in one question, so I apologize for that.
No, it's okay. It's a beautiful question because I too have 60 supplements on my supplement tray in my kitchen. And every day I look at it and there's no way I'm going to take all of them. Mm-hmm. And so from the Ayurvedic perspective, we should constantly look at what do we need to stay in balance, honoring the season, the decade we're in. I'm in my 40s. This is a different decade of involvement with my health than before. Mm-hmm. In my 50s and 60s, I can just see that this is going to increase. It's coming. And then we should also look at what do we really need? And so, for example, with turmeric can be heating to the body. It is going to ignite a little bit of heat. In the West, is that fine? Yes. 99% of the time, we're in air conditioning. Now, if you're going to be an outdoor worker, if maybe you are at the beach all summer, you should reduce your curcumin intake in the summer because it is hotter. Can we mitigate that? Yes. Some people need their curcumin so badly. Then I guide them, drink coconut water, drink cool drinks. Like you can mitigate that effect. I think any supplement we take, we should look at if we need to be 6 out of 7 days a week, if we need to take a week off every quarter or a season off every year. That's the truth. Is we should, in an ideal world, not need to take the supplements year round. The only problem is many of us are not maintaining any sort of diet that maintains those levels. For example, I don't eat fish, so I have no other source of omega-3 other than supplementation. Based on the current diet I'm on, I am running certain deficiencies with D and B and certain things. So certain things I should take year round or build up the level and then have certain weeks where I take off, but I'm holding my results. Right. And so that's where it's like a nuanced answer. I do think that there are a lot of tools for longevity that we are taking as investments in our future health. To me, curcumin is definitely one. Ginger is another. I love ashwagandha for that, for neurocognitive benefits and all the it's an adaptogen, so all the adaptogenic benefits. Yeah. And then also when it comes to our immune health, I think curcumin can be very powerful. So I take it mainly for the immune benefit. I need my immune defense system up and running. And so seasonally, I can just take off. Like today, I'm fine. I'll take no curcumin. But if anyone sneezes, anyone coughs, or I'm about to travel, then I start increasing that dose. If I feel something come on, I do high dosing, and then I come down. So I think it's really about playing with it, but also we do have this society that's overtaking supplements every day, and we need to learn how to play with it, like build some flexibility. I meet a lot of women who are like, I eat salmon and salad every day for lunch. I'm like, guys, Ayurveda teaches nutrient density and nutrient variety. We have to bring variety into the picture. It can't be that anything is prescribed and is forever in a day.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's true. It's funny. I mean, we often talk about people eating junk food and fried food and this food and that food, but there is a segment of the population, they just want things to be simple. And I've had those clients, they don't really care. They don't care about food for food's sake. For them, food is a means to an end. And so they're looking for the prescription. So tell me what to eat, right? Am I supposed to eat 2 eggs and whatever first thing in the morning? Then at lunch, I'm going to have, to your point, like salmon and salad. And then for dinner, I'm going to have this, this, and this, and that. And then they rinse and repeat every single day. And what I think we miss sometimes is that lack of variety is in and of itself likely to build in either toxicity, because every food's got a downside, and down the road, deficiencies. So basically what you're saying on curcumin is if you don't have a raging health issue right now, it's the kind of thing you're going to pulse on and off of, as in and out, like depending, and there's no risk of me getting too hot right now. It's winter. So
Yeah,
This
so
might be
you
a
could
good
take
time
it
to
consistent through
throw.
your winter. It's your
Yeah.
immune support. Come spring, you can go every other day. You can go
Yeah.
6 days a week. You can kind of go with the flow there. And
Yeah.
then come summer, you can use less,
Yeah.
unless you're going to travel or unless you hurt yourself and you need inflammation relief, that relief on board, that kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Well, and the other thing I would do, and I haven't made bone broth in a long time, but I'm just got a bunch of bones recently. So I'm about to make some bone broth, and I will take turmeric root and throw
Yes.
a couple of chunks into my bone broth when I'm cooking
Awesome.
it, because there's natural fats in there. There's going to be pepper in there. And so it's not going to be a curcumin supplement by any stretch of the imagination, but I am going to get some of those curcuminoids kind of coming into the soup, into the broth
Exactly. And there is science on non-curcuminoid benefits. So it's not
the
like
other factors around the curcuminoids, right?
yes, and there are natural fats, like you said. So there's a lot of properties as a whole plant. I know everyone, I'm a curcumin fan, but there are other benefits. And I'm looking forward to, in this lifetime, seeing what people publish on those other factors. We just haven't discovered them yet.
Right. So so that's a really interesting point, right? And we see this over and over and over again in nature, that we will go in, we'll find that one piece of an element that is super beneficial.
Yep.
And then we become so myopic about what else is around it that sometimes we're leaving a lot of stuff on the table that is meant to work with it, or that adds to it, or balances it out.
Exactly. And that's what my advisors shared with me. They were like, don't be one of those people who just breaks off a molecule of curcumin and says, here, I have the best one. Remember that whole plant with extract is how we're honoring that whole of nature with the solution can also have a synergistic effect.
So in your supplement, you do use you use the extract to get your therapeutic dosage of the curcuminoid, let's say, but then you are also using the full spectrum of the powder of the root.
Correct. Yeah, I made 2 formulas because I wasn't sure which one orthopedics would utilize and respect. So I made one that was a very straight shot. So it's the curcumin with the whole turmeric with the piperine. So that's turmeric gold. It just delivers that result of you want a great turmeric. But I had this other theory of, can we take all of Ayurveda's ancient wisdom, pull the guduchi with the curcumin, with the amla, boswellia, dried ginger, all of it together, and would it deliver a different result? And so that's my inflammation relief. And that's for anyone who knows they're inflamed. And so then people put the 2 together, which I never thought of, and that became their joint pain solution. And so it's been interesting, the exploration and the testimonials. I love hearing the answers of what people share with me. And they're like, you helped my knee pain, but then my gingivitis went away. You helped my allergies. I stopped sneezing. So to me, I'm an explorer on the journey of still discovering all the ways curcumin can support us, because there's a lot of issues right now. There's fertility, perimenopause, menopause, lots of neurocognitive issues. And we know how much Alzheimer's dementia is an issue right now. Of course, diabetes, metabolic disease, so much obesity affecting us. And so if curcumin can be this solution that we take with us on the car ride of life, I'm just constantly exploring how many other ways can we use it.
Yeah. I've even seen some stuff around depression and mental health issues. I think we can all agree are out of control. Like the day that today we are recording this, there's one of the big telecoms in Canada. This is their mental health day today. So they've got all these different activities going on. And I think it's because the CEO of the company lost a family member to depression years ago. And there is some literature around on depression. And I wonder if, again, it just goes back to that whole anti-inflammatory pathway
effect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it does. They have there is science that shows that curcumin is as effective as Prozac. There's science that shows that it's as effective for depression. And the thing is, Ayurveda always said gut health is all health. That gut digestive fire, your investment in that is your investment in your mental health, brain health, everything, and immune health. So I think that on this journey that we have around it, it can be a great support as well.
Yeah, so it's worth giving it a shot. Okay, so as we're kind of closing up, I do want to touch a little bit on some of the contraindications, because there are, like you said earlier, not everything's going to be good for every single body, no matter how great that thing is. So there are definitely some populations of people that might want to be more cautious, and especially when we're getting into therapeutic dosing, right? This is not so much about throwing some turmeric or curcumin in your food, but this may move into a world where you're using a supplement where somebody's actually taken the time to extract the most potent elements of the plant, made them as bioavailable as possible. And there are going to be some populations of people that maybe should be more cautious, or maybe just shouldn't use it.
Sure.
I've got a list here, but do you want to talk about a few of them, or you want me to kind of?
No, I can do it. My whole goal with curcumin was to show Western medicine that it could be their adjunct solution. So I have been very controlling over supplier, how we extract, made in the USA, third-party testing, heavy metal testing, microbial testing, all these factors so it could be trusted in Western medicine here by all sorts of practitioners, orthopedics, chiropractic, functional medicine, all the different groups. And so that's been such a joy because they are brilliant. They are physicians, they're practitioners. They're here to help us when we have a acute health issue or even sometimes chronic health issues that we run to them for. But it's so cool because they need to know right off the bat what the contraindications are. So the number one with curcumin is blood thinner. It has a blood thinning effect. It is a vasodilator. So it's good in the sense that a lot of us want nitric oxide and things to increase that blood flow. We want healthier hair. It affects libido, reproductive organs, ED, a lot of these things that people are taking blood flow type supplements for. It helps. But the negative effect is if you are on any blood thinner, you should not take a curcumin supplement. You have to beware. Then oxalates and kidney stones. If you have a predisposition to kidney stones, it is not recommended to take high-dose curcumin in this form because it could cause problems. Then if you are deficient in iron, I have seen, and my practitioners have seen this, if you're taking chronic turmeric, you need to be watching that iron level, ferritin and iron, and be supplementing. Watch it and take the right supplements to hold your iron levels or pulse with your curcumin. For me, I'm not going to pulse with my curcumin. I need it on board for my issues. So my doctor's like, remember to watch your iron levels. And that's most of them. You can read off your list because we were discussing it earlier.
Well, I think the liver issue is a big deal. Yeah. I think a lot of people feel that, it is pushing the liver to work a little harder, generally in good ways. But I think that people who have pre-existing liver conditions maybe need to either consult with their medical provider or be extra cautious around something like curcumin. And then I wonder if maybe people who are taking certain medications, like, does it affect the enzymes of the liver, some of the detox pathways of the liver? Like, for example, you have people who take statins, for example, who can't eat things like grapefruit because it upregulates, I think it's the Q450 enzyme. And so, when they do their calculation about how much statin they're going to give you, they assume a certain liver function, and the grapefruit changes that. And then you can end up with a toxic reaction.
Wow. I have not seen science on that.
On what? On curcumin?
On curcumin with a statin.
Oh, no, I don't. No, I'm not saying. I just gave the statin as an example. But all I'm saying is the statin and grapefruit as an example. I actually don't think that curcumin and statins are a problem. They would be one of those things you'd want to look through. But I think in the case of people who have liver disease or some kind of liver issue, it might be an issue.
It can, and that's true for all supplements.
Sure.
We have to be careful because, like you said, a lot of people are taking 60 supplements at a time, underestimating what that means for our organs to process.
Well, exactly. It increases the load on the liver right out of the gate. Actually, I'm in a group of practitioners, and someone came in and said, listen, I've got this client who's got elevated liver enzymes. She's taking 10,000 supplements. And we're like, maybe time to start editing the list, like pull back.
Yeah. And that's the thing is I have a huge supplement tray and I always look at it and I'm like, what am I willing to take today? And usually if I really drill it down, what do I need? Like, what do I travel with no matter what and need? It's my D, my probiotic, and my turmeric. To me, turmeric is such a coverall, like it does so much overall that it's like your Swiss Army knife. And it's also the fire extinguisher when it comes to the inflammation, that chronic, low-grade, persistent inflammation that most of us are carrying. repairing, it's inflammaging us, it's aging us so fast. And then you brought up longevity, that's where there's a play, because a lot of us are into longevity and our health over time. And I just did a talk on how curcumin affects autophagy, our sirtuins, our telomeres, our zombie cells. And so I want to take it every day as my overall, and then I just pulse maybe 1 or 2 days a week. I'll forget it and I won't worry about it. But yeah, I do think we have to watch out if we're going to take 60 things.
That's really interesting that it impacts autophagy and even DNA repair, right? At a cellular level. That's really interesting.
Exactly. I'm part of a study out of Clemson University where we're studying why is curcumin so effective when it comes to our genes? Like, why is it affecting so many gene pathways? And there's the scientist, he's a geneticist, and he was curious. And he said, well, you're the turmeric girl. Let's talk about it. So we're actively studying, and we've come up with this software, this coding software that's connecting which spices can we put together for which diseases. So curcumin ginger, like a hint, but curcumin ginger we already discovered is better for Alzheimer's than curcumin alone.
Nice.
So it's really interesting when you're able to kind of really drill down into DNA, genetics, and all the pathways, the level of understanding you can get about which combos help which issues in the body.
That's so fascinating. I'm looking forward to reading more about that actually when you start releasing that information. That's so interesting.
For sure.
Okay, so you already mentioned iron deficiency, bleeding disorders, gallbladder issues related to the liver. I wonder also with the gallbladder if it has something to do with the need for fat. And obviously someone who's got gallbladder issues, I mean, it's a paradox, right? Because the less fat you eat, the more likely you are to have a gallbladder issue, because it gets kind of sludgy.
Yes.
But there definitely, it seems that there's a belief that around certain types of gallbladder issues. So this goes back down to really working with a guide, like a practitioner, someone who's familiar with these pathways and who can help people to, test the waters, as it were, and see.
Sure. But that's where drilling down with functional medicine and an integrative practitioner, I think, is really important. Because when we look at the traditional Western system, a lot of their answers is just don't take supplements. Supplements are not good. And I hear it all the time. Even my MDs who are stepping into functional medicine, they'll call me sometimes. They'll say, hey, I have this patient. The patient's on 30 meds. This is what they're taking. What do you think? And I'm like, don't make supplements the enemy. Let's look at that patient's diet. Let's look at the drugs they're on. Let's talk about their sleep. Like, don't throw supplements under the bus first. Supplements are doing a great job. The supplement world is on a whole new level of standards and really scrutiny is the right word for it. So supplements are starting to rise to the level of pharmaceuticals when it comes to our processes, our testing, our standards, our rules, all the things. I think it's going to be nearly impossible to create a self-started supplement company probably in the next 10 years because it'll simply be too expensive. You'll have to have hit a certain benchmark. That's why everyone just private labels. You just buy other people's stuff and slap your name on it. But I don't believe in that. I think that if you're going to create something, you should know your factory. You should know your suppliers. You should know every aspect of what you're putting in a capsule that's going to go into someone else's body when they're desiring a certain result. Yeah. And so that's what my exploration and research and work has been, lifelong work for the last 8-10 years, is how are we going to create that change? And so that's why I love having conversations like this, because we get to dive deeper. It's not just take a turmeric pill. It's, hey, turmeric does all this. If you're of any of these groups of people, don't take it. And for everyone, let's look at the whole picture. Let's not make supplements the bad guy when we all know the work we need to do when it comes to our health, myself 100%. Included.
Well, and as you said, you've got someone who's on a number of different medications. And I do understand the physician's reluctance to throw supplements in there, possibly because they're uncertain about what the impact is going to be. And I think sometimes a supplement can be helpful. Sometimes the work has to be done on the lifestyle. Like, as you said, the lifestyle, the diet, addressing the causes of needing those medications, maybe titrating down some of those medications, maybe getting rid of some of them and weaving the supplements in as you go so that they can start to kind of pick up the load a little bit. So it is definitely, I think there's as much art as there is science to this whole journey, right? And I think this is why Ayurveda, maybe in conventional medicine, quite apart from the fact that nobody knows about it, it's a tough thing to weave in, because you don't become an Ayurvedic doctor, an accomplished Ayurvedic doctor in 3 years. It takes experience, it takes time. And there's that science, there's the science foundation, and then there's the art. Yeah. Where you're customizing for every individual.
Yeah. And a lot of it's intuition. Like I would say when I started being an Ayurvedic practitioner, I was like, oh, this will be easy. They just need to know their dosha. And then when you fix their gut health, all keys are fixed. You've turned every key and they're just magically healed. And it takes a lot of humility to understand that's not true. You can't scale Ayurvedic care, which is what I really thought when I started. And now I see, and a lot of times when I do a private consultation, I can just intuitively tell you what the issue is, because my intuition now screams the answer out of me, which is fascinating. You're like, it's this, but you want to listen and hear the whole picture. But usually that gut is telling you the answer, or there's no clear picture. Like dosha is unclear, person is unclear. And we have to just walk through the pillars of health and put each one in place. And then we're going to get that result. It takes work. It is as much an art as a science, because we are so bio-individual and we change over time. And if we have traumas in our lives or big shifts, like having kids or anything, it can really create a huge dosha imbalance and a shift in the body. And then we need to do the work to return back. And so plant kingdom, plant medicine is my favorite toolkit to reach into. I think there's so much wisdom there. And the intelligence of plants resonates with us. We're from nature, the plants are from nature. So that synergistic effect is easier to achieve. And that's why we're seeing this type of science come out now. It's saying, look, curcumin's the best anti-inflammatory antioxidant. It can do so much for you. And I'm seeing more and more people use it and then say, yeah, actually, I can see it now. I can feel what I needed to feel.
Yeah, I love it. Well, I can tell you, my dad loved it. He loved his Fusionary Formulas. He did exactly what you said. He started with the one, then he layered it, then he titrated it up, then he layered in the second one. And I think he definitely benefited from it. He really enjoyed his curcumin journey. All right. So Shivani, I think we could keep talking for a long time, but maybe let's let people know where they can find out more about you. And if they want to try your beautiful supplements, and the beauty of, one of the many beautiful things about you is you've really honed in on this one thing, and you've kept it to very specific, very targeted, and extremely meticulously sourced, the whole 9 yards. But a lot of this is on your website. So maybe where can people find you on social media, on your website? You have a podcast of your own, and then we have a special offer for the listeners. So why don't you help us to close with that?
Sure. So my website is fusionaryformulas.com. It's FUSIONARY formulas. And we're on Instagram, YouTube, and all the socials with that name. Then I have ShivaniGupta.com, my site for Ayurveda with the dosha quiz and everything. That's SHIVANI Gupta.com. And I'm at Dr.ShivaniGupta on Instagram and social. My podcast is Fusionary Health, where I interview amazing practitioners like yourself. And we get to dive into all these topics around health and wellness and how to really approach our health from the different vantage points. And we made a special code, NAT15, which is 15% off Fusionary for your listeners.
Amazing. Shivani, thank you again so much for the amazing work that you have done and are doing and continue to do, and for giving us your time and sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It was a pleasure.